Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So a couple more mantras to finish the round, and then I was going to read some Krishna book and also take another look at Saubhari Muni and what happened to him in his practice, yogic practice. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. What kind of got me thinking about this was in reading about Kalia, we find out why Kalia took shelter in the lake at the bottom of the Yamuna. And it's explained that he knew Garuda wouldn't come there to attack him. So Kalia, there was an arrangement. Garuda would come to eat snakes, he would come to eat fish, and I was having a little problem with that. Like, Garuda is not different from Krishna in the sense that he's the winged carrier. He's a direct expansion of Krishna, and he's eating fish, he's eating snakes. I mean, you know, if one offers me with love and devotion a fruit, leaf, or water, I'll accept. But what's with the snakes and the fish? So, this is transcendental activities. This is not material activities. So, Garuda's body is not material. It's a spiritual form of Krishna. And you think, well, Krishna, he dances with other men's wives in the middle of the night and enjoys intimate conjugal relationships with these women that they're not his wife. So he's not on the material platform. These are spiritual, transcendental, beyond birth, death, old age, and disease. This is a whole other energy field. What we see here is simply reflected through matter, through earth, water, air, fire, ether, ego, mind, intelligence. it's a reflection through material energy, which is constantly changing, has no permanence to it, in the sense that the forms that are created within this energy are illusory. They don't last. They have a beginning and an end. They have a cause and an effect. It's a different energy field. Scientists have yet to study this energy field, this spiritual energy field. So if Garuda comes and he eats a snake, it's a benefit for that living entity, because he swallows him up. And if he eats a fish, he swallows that entity up. It's like when Krishna kills a demon. It's like, it's a benediction. It's a great deliverance to be, for Garuda to eat that entity, take him into himself. So, but Kalia was the king of the snakes, and they would put, it was a kind of a disturbance to the snake community under the water, because they never knew when Garuda was going to come and eat somebody. So it was upsetting society, snake society. So they made an arrangement that they would give an offering, and that Garuda would only come and take that offering and leave everybody else alone, and they could go about doing their snake business. So they made the offering, but Kalia, he said, I want, because the snakes eat each other, he says, I want that offering for myself. The heck with Garuda, a bird comes, forget the bird, I'm the king of the snakes, I'm gonna eat that offering. So Garuda didn't like that. And Kalia, he had to find someplace to hide, because Garuda was going to get him, the next snake to eat. He wasn't ready to be delivered. He wanted to be a snake some more. So he knew that Garuda, there was one place where Garuda would not go, and that was at the bottom of the Yamuna. Because there was a great sage, a great yogi, meditating underwater there, and had some affection for the fish. He felt some compassion for them, he felt some affection for them. And Garuda would also go there. Garuda went to where Kalia lived in his thing and eat snakes, and then he would go to the Yamuna and dive in and grab a fish. So Saubhari Muni didn't like that. He didn't recognize what was going on, the transcendental picture. He didn't get it. That this was an expansion of Krishna, Garuda. He didn't get it. So he cursed Garuda. If you come here anymore and eat any more of these fish, you will die immediately. And I say that with all my yogic power and strength. So yogis, sometimes they conjure up all the strength they've gotten from their austerities to give a curse to somebody. It's what they do. It happens. It happened to Ambarish Maharaj when Saubhari Muni came. He made some curse. But it backfires, because if you curse a Vaishnav or you curse a devotee, it backfires. And the curse has to go somewhere, and because Krishna doesn't let the devotee or the Vaishnav get the effect of that curse. So Garuda accepted it, explains here. He accepted the curse, and he didn't go to the Yamuna anymore for fish. He respected the Muni. And so Kalia knew if he went there, Garuda wouldn't come there. He could live there happily and peacefully. And so he went there. And we know that because he was poisonous, Krishna made him leave. But he promised him that Garuda wouldn't bother him because of he'd see Krishna's footprints on Kalia, where Krishna had kicked all his poison out in that battle that they had, dancing fight there. But Saubhari Muni, he fell down because he cursed a great Vaishnava, a great devotee of the Lord, a servant of the Lord, Garuda. He cursed him, not recognizing that personality, that form. And so one day when he was meditating underwater, he saw some fish engaging in sexual activity. The mating thing. Da, 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 da. And he felt sex desire rise in his heart. And he had to quit his meditation. He couldn't do it anymore. And he made himself look like he was ugly. He'd been under the water. He was all shriveled up and old. But he had mystic potency, so he made himself look very attractive and handsome and young. And he approached, I think, King Mandata. It was the king of the world at the time. The king of the 7 islands. And asked for his daughters. And all 50 of them said, yeah. And then they argued. But he fell down. And he says, Saubhari Muni has a realization after enjoying the opulence of this, even King Mandata, the king of the world, had to admit that he's more opulent than I am, and I'm the king of the world. I'm the emperor. And he's what's going on with him is way beyond what I've got. So, but then Saubhari Muni had the realization, he says, this is in Bhagavatam, 9th canto. Alas, while practicing austerity, because he wasn't happy, even though he had all that, opulence and sense enjoyment, and he was not satisfied. Bhagavatam 6:48. In this way, Saubhari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world, but he was not at all satisfied, just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. One day, Saubhari Muni, who was expert in chanting mantras, was sitting in a secluded place. He thought to himself about the cause of his fall down, which is simply that he associated himself with sexual affairs of the fish. No. That was the result of what he did that made him have that, become subject to that again. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that Saubhari Muni had fallen down from his austerity because of Vaishnava aparad. The history is that when Garuda wanted to eat fish, Saubhari Muni unnecessarily gave the fish shelter under his care. Because Garuda's plans for eating were disappointed, Saubhari Muni certainly committed a great offense to a Vaishnava. Because of Vaishnava aparad, an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, Saubhari Muni fell from his exalted position of mystic tapasya. Hare Krishna, this is the lesson to learn from the incident. It was because of his offense to Garuda. It took that form that he began to have this desire for material enjoyment. So you have to get to the root of why that's coming up. Yeah, that to desire material things, but why is that there? It's because of offense. Offense to a Vaishnava. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. A secluded place is also, Saubhari Muni was in a very secluded place, under the water. So even a secluded place is not secure unless there is good association. So then Saubhari is having realizations here. Bhagavatam 9.6.52. In the beginning I was alone and engaged in performing austerities of mystic yoga. But later, because of the association of fish, engaged in sex, I desired to marry. Then I became the husband of 50 wives, and in each of them I begot 100 sons, and thus my family increased to 5,000 members. By influence of the modes of material nature, I became fallen and thought that I would be happy in material life. Thus, there is no end to my material desires for enjoyment in this life and the next. There's a happy ending. When it was time, and he was older, and it was time to prepare for leaving, he accepted Vanaprast and went to the forest. His wives went with him. They had no other shelter than their husband. Which is interesting because each of them had 50 sons, or 100 sons, so why they had no shelter. But the shelter here, I believe, is because he was a mystic transcendentalist. We don't know what condition the sons were. So the shelter here that they were taking was of a great transcendentalist. And he was reviving his spiritual form, his spiritual life, renouncing the material. So they took shelter of that, following him there into that renounced situation. Like spiritual master. When Saubhari is quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, he performed severe penances. In this way, in the fire, at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Personality of God. At the time of death, fire burns the gross body, and if there is no more desire for material enjoyment in the subtle body, is also ended. And in this way, a pure soul remains. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Chakva Dehan Punarjanma 90. If one is free from the bondage of both the gross and subtle material bodies and remains a pure soul, He returns home, back to Godhead, to be engaged in the service of the Lord. Chakva dehan punar janma naitimam eti. He goes back home, back to Godhead. Thus it appears that Saubhari Muni attained that perfect stage. By observing their husband progressing in spiritual existence, Saubhari Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by his spiritual power, just as the flames of fire cease when the fire is extinguished. So there's a happy ending. Very happy ending. Hare Krishna, and that's the progression. We see in the Bhagavatam these different progressions. We see also with Maharaj Bharata how he became affectionate and attached and protective toward a baby deer. And he got distracted like that. And he was practicing severe austerities. He was a great king. He'd done his kingly duties perfectly, but he became distracted when he went to the forest to prepare for leaving by this baby deer. And he developed some attachment, some affection for the deer. It aroused in him these different feelings on a material plane for the body of the deer. So he had to take birth as a deer, but he took birth as a deer, but he had full consciousness of what happened. He went through the deer's body, got through that, and then he took birth as the son of a Brahmin, but he didn't want anything to do with society or culture or anything. He just wanted to remember Krishna. He'd had enough. He'd already been through 3 births. That's enough. Krishna. So those are the kinds of things to be careful we get attached to. But we don't see with Maharaj Bharata that he offended a Vaishnava. We don't see that. And it wasn't that he was attached to sex life. It wasn't like sex desire. But with Saubhari Muni, it's pretty clear. He offended a Vaishnava, cursed them with all his yogic strength, and then made him weak. Made him susceptible to material desires. So then he had to go through material activities on a material plane and enjoying. But in the end, he realized there's no end to this. There's no end to it in this life. It just keeps going. I have 5,000 sons already. It just keeps going. And in the next life. So I have to take birth again. That's it. I'm done. When you're done, you know. You know when you're done. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But I was going to read Krishna book, but we did Saubhari Muni. Hare Krishna, Krishna's chant somewhere around. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In a sense, it was kind of like a blessing that he offended Garuda, because just to sit under the water and meditate in yogic trance, that can go on for like thousands and thousands of lifetimes, or thousands and thousands of years. Where is the progress in devotional service? It's by association. So he approached Garuda in an unacceptable way by cursing him, but he got the mercy. So the association is the most important thing, even if this is done on offense. It's very powerful. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He was relieved from that intense austerity. He was relieved of that. And then eventually he realized the personality of Godhead. And he took his wives with him. They all went back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The Garuda didn't get angry, because the Vaishnav, they don't accept offenses. It was an offense. Saubhari Muni made a big offense. But the Vaishnav doesn't accept the offense. Krishna doesn't like it. But the Vaishnav, so Garuda didn't get angry. He was a little rascally. Once he was cursed, he grabbed one big fish and went away. Hare Krishna, Hare rascally. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.